Hey, what's up guys? Note Investor here. Want to give you guys a quick update on Bitcoin. Everyone's saying, oh, we're pulling back. That's it. It's the end of the world. We're crashing. Here comes the death cross. And, I just want to give you guys some unbiased, some rational thoughts here on just the price action, right? Let's just look at where we're at. Up, down, potential upside targets, downside targets, and I'm also going to cover very quickly some of the stronger altcoin names that are out there, and that's what's kind of keeping me less bearish than most. So let's get to it here real quick. This is Bitcoin on the 4-hour chart on Bitfinex. So you can see I've got a couple of areas highlighted here. If you caught my video earlier this week after we had that big run, I started talking about, hey, we're going to see a potential pause or a pullback here. Not because I was turning bearish, but because we needed it for two reasons. We needed to, one, retest the support and show where the support would start coming in off of this big low we saw over the weekend. And two, it's just a healthy pause and a consolidation, which if it holds support, will set up for another leg up. So that's what I was looking for. The specific buy zone or support zone that I was watching was the area between 8,600 and 8,300. And you can see we've kind of just been bouncing around this zone here for the last day or so. We've had a few false starts trying to break above. That declining 10 EMA on that 4-hour so far has proven to be a little bit of a resistance zone, and so that's the area to watch. There's also this declining trend line here that's in play right now, and the horizontal price resistance more so around that 8,700 mark. So three things to watch. One, can we break this trend line on the 4-hour chart? Two, can we get above this 8,700 mark or so? And the moving average is 3, which would also correspond with the trend line and the horizontal price point. So those are the areas I'm watching. If we start to move higher into the 8,800, 9K range, then that's going to really start to show that this low here at the support level was holding, and that would be very positive. Below this, the next level down I was watching for was at psychological 8K mark. We didn't want the price to get too deep because then it would really start to invalidate this big reversal bar that we saw over the weekend. And so we wanted the price to hold above that. And so around 8K would be the area that I'd be looking for if this fails here and continues to go lower. Below that, then that's going to become a little bit too deep in terms of a reversal. So a couple of other things to look at here. Let's go to the daily chart. I want to show you guys a potential pattern to keep an eye on that may be setting up here on the daily chart. So looking at the daily, let me clear the volume and some of the other items here just to make it easier to see. But here is the daily candle pattern here, and clearly we've been in a downtrend since breaking from this double top. We've rallied into the neckline of resistance last week. That failed. Then we went lower and finally found support around that $7,200, $7,300 mark, which is positive because it was higher than the big washout low in February. And so we've had a higher low established. Next, we're looking for some sort of confirmation, some sort of reversal pattern. And so there's one pattern that I'm watching here, and that is the inverted head and shoulder pattern on this daily chart. And so you can see that, if you look at the first shoulder here, that's this decline that bottomed out around 8,300 or so, rallied up to about 94, 95, and then we had the next leg down last week, which took us to around 72, 7,300, and now we're rallying, and we rallied up to around 9,100, couldn't break above that 92, and here we are pulling back. And so I'm watching this pullback. Ideally, we'd want to see this right shoulder finish right around here, because it would match at least this left shoulder, wouldn't go too much deeper. It could go to 8K and still be a valid pattern, and then we would want to see this neckline taken out, which is a declining neckline, kind of slanting to the right here. And so that neckline at this point, if this is the end of the low and we start to march higher, then the place to watch on this neckline at this point is around 9K, 9,100 or so. And then ultimately the most recent high around 9,200. And so if we can clear that with some pretty decent volume, then that would complete this pattern here. If it goes a little bit lower to 8K, then by the time it rallies, the neckline will be a little lower. So you'd be looking for around 8,900 as far as the breakout point goes from this trend. So this is a potential pattern to watch here over the next couple of days. I know there's a lot of talk of the impending death cross here. If you missed my video, I'll put a link to it in the description. I did a video on the death cross here a couple of days ago, and ultimately why it is not going to influence my trading one bit. Now I know there's a lot of media attention around this, and you know, it still hasn't turned, but it still could over the next couple of days, and so that's going to be in the forefront. But it's not really going to influence my trading strategy one bit. I tend to look at lower time frames anyway when making my entries and my exits, but that's the pattern I'm watching here in the near term. So keep an eye on this potential inverted head and shoulders forming, and those are the levels to be watching on Bitcoin going into the next couple of hours, in the next day or so. Let's quickly look at a few altcoins. And before I forget, I will be going live later today to kick off the weekend, and so I will be posting that. So keep an eye out for that. I will post it out on Twitter and all that good stuff. So watch out for the announcement there. So a couple of the other names. Binance in the news again. So that was the Japanese regulator FUD that kind of scared everybody. Now there's a report that Binance is going to be opening an office in Malta. And so Malta is a tiny island out in the Mediterranean just south of Italy, if you're not familiar with where that is. But it's kind of nice that they're kind of being preemptive there, and they're saying, all right, we're going to Malta. So they're moving an office there. They are Hong Kong based, but just always in the news here lately. And that is a coin that I do like. I do have a position in this, so full disclosure. But a couple of things to watch on this one. It's really been trying to set up and hold a low here with the ultimate breakout resistance point here around that $11 mark. You can see it's tested it a few times, pulled back, rallied up to it, and here we are getting some more volume coming in on that. Near term support is around the mid $9 range on the USD pair, and so this is the USD pair, not the BTC chart, but it's still looking very strong on both. And the daily chart is really what I'm watching, because if it can clear that $11 area and then, you know, $12, there's not a lot of overhead resistance until you get to around, you know, $14 and $16. And so, you know, getting above 11 could kick off some momentum here. And, you know, you could see a 20 to 30% run on this thing. The most recent highs were in the low $20 mark. You can see, technically speaking, there's still plenty of upside room before this thing gets anywhere near being overbought. And so all around, a pretty interesting setup here. I'd be watching this one to see if it could break out here and continue some of the momentum. The buy volume on here has been pretty decent too. If you look at the big volume spike here, this was when they announced the Binance blockchain, and this most recent action here is pretty positive in terms of the buy volume here. So a lot of accumulation showing up here. It's one I definitely would be keeping an eye on. Another one is Icon, just continues to move up, certainly getting into the overbought levels now, but I mean, just continues to rally. Once they had that news of being added to the exchange, just really took off, continues to move higher. You can see we had a little bit of a pullback here with most of the alts kind of resting and pausing over the last day. This one's breaking out a little bit, but I'd start to get a little cautious here because you are seeing a little bit of a divergence on the RSI as the price makes a new high. RSI is not really confirming it on that 4 hour. On the 1 hours, a little bit more prominent there. You can see that on the 1 hour bar that as the price continues higher, it's not confirming on the RSI, and so it's not a sell signal in and of itself, but I use that as a warning flag that, hey, maybe this is due for a little bit of a pause here. Not certainly one to be chasing and FOMOing into unless you're willing to put a really tight stop just in case it turns on you there. But still, in the big picture, I'm liking Icon. It'd be great if it could give us a little bit of a consolidation, a new base right up in here, but it really has turned the corner in the big picture. You had that huge pullback over the last couple of months and just very strong off the lows, and so all around looking pretty good. Some of the other ones, the big names, Litecoin just continues to lag still. Here's Litecoin USD. But this is pretty much just following Bitcoin in terms of the USD pair price action. You can see we had that big rally off the lows, good volume, and so far this pullback has been constructive and healthy. I mean, you can see the volume is declining here as this one pulls back and just kind of following the same pattern as Bitcoin. So this one, there's nothing big red flags here in terms of big sell volume, but on the BTC chart, I would really like to see this one start outperforming. And so I'm watching this trend line here and seeing if it can get above this and start outperforming Bitcoin near term. ETH continues to be the weak one in the bunch. A couple of levels to watch on ETH here. You can see we had a big shakeout here last weekend. Tons of volume showed up, but look at the bounce was pretty weak compared to most of the other names. Just did not participate as much in this rally, and so still sitting tight in this little bit of a range, trying to hold support around that 520, 530 area. But right now, this one is certainly the laggard. And if you look at it versus Bitcoin, there was a pattern I was watching here, and it's breaking support, so I'd be very cautious. A couple of days ago, I pointed out that this thing was getting very narrow. We had a horizontal price support pattern here versus BTC, and then we had this declining trend line, and it was kind of decision time for ETH versus BTC, and it decided to break lower, and it's now living below that support area. And so this one is just not looking very strong at the moment, and so I'd be very cautious here versus BTC. In the big picture, though, it just continues to remain at these very suppressed, oversold levels, and so I keep expecting that this thing is going to finally see a bounce or decent volume, but I know there's a lot of selling pressure, potentially ICOs and companies that raised a lot of ETH are selling it, and so that's kind of providing some headwinds there. Technically speaking, it's kind of in the middle of no man's land. We had this big run up here, and there's not a huge support area, and we're right in the middle of that, so it just kind of depends on where this thing's going to find some support, but so far has just been one of the laggards. And that's a theme that I've seen here recently in terms of this recent bounce is I'm more favoring the mid cap to small cap tier in terms of the altcoin market, and not so much the bigger names, right? Other than maybe Cardano, most of the other names in the top 10, top 15 have really lagged. You can see Neo has just, had a pretty good pump off the lows, but it's not really following through, right? It's kind of pulling back a little bit. Dash and some of those other names are just kind of the laggards, and the big volume, the big moves has come into the tier just below that, right? The tier below the top 15, top 10 or so. Icon, Quantum, and if you go down the list into even smaller names, right, they're starting to move. Tron's looking pretty good here. It's having a pretty decent move, but some of the bigger moves has been in the smaller cap names. If you go to just some of the recent movers in the last day or so, right, they tend to be in the middle tier. So that's a theme that I'm going to continue to stick with in terms of some of my trading is I'm looking for more of those opportunities in some of the names below the big caps. And so that's what I'm going to be doing. And I just wanted to cycle through some of these names, guys. I will go into a lot more depth during our live stream, and we'll look at some more charts in detail. But I wanted to give you guys a quick update on Bitcoin, some of the action I'm seeing, and some of the levels to be watching here in the next day, in the next few hours, and most importantly, this recent 4-hour bar, which by the time you watch this will be closed, but keep an eye out to see if it finally can break that downtrend and start moving higher here. Appreciate you guys watching. Keep you guys posted until next time. Take care, everyone.